Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I hope everybody's had a good week. And we're going to talk about some maintenance type stuff. Some maintenance stuff and some stuff that I guess you could just call some tips that some folks may not think about. In fact, I know a lot of folks don't think about them because I get asked questions about it all the time. So we're going to go over a few things like that. Let's see what checking my notes here, folks. I don't know a whole lot going on. Usually make some kind of announcements or something. Javi, is there anything going on that I should bring up before we get started?
Well, I can't think of anything at the moment. My mind's a blank, but I'm sure something will turn up.
Yeah, I know there's a bunch of challenges and stuff going on, but I'm not been involved with them at all.
So. Yeah, the plywood challenge just ended. Well, actually, I'll mention what I did for that one if you like.
Sure,
on the CNC. David Jones from Portal Woodwork just had his yearly plywood challenge, and I created this thing. And then people are going, what in the world is this thing? Well, recently I received a couple advertisements for a small metal version of an equal space divider. Well, I need something considerably larger. So this basically is the large version of an equal space divider. And each of the pieces, I have it cut right in half, so I could just use this to make the marks, draw the lines, and that's.
And that's, I think you mentioned in your video, isn't that for like laying out studs and stuff?
Yeah, like that's what I'm going to be using it for, because this particular one is large enough to go 16 inches on center, and I could lay out bottom plates of studs and just about anything. And I realized that the nice thing about this is I can also like nail it or hang it to the wall just in the right place if I like. And you know how sometimes when you lay out the 8-foot drywall and you need to find the marks. I mean, usually I'll use a long T-square and draw the lines down to follow the studs. But this could work just as well. I'll just lay it across and I'll know exactly where to mark for the lines. I don't know, whichever's easier, I'll figure out a way.
Well, it's nice to see that you made, you participated in a challenge, but ended up making something that's really useful. Because, a lot of times on those challenges, you're just making stuff that's, you're trying to win the challenge, but you don't really use whatever it is you made. So.
Yeah, for me, it's got to be either practical or hilarious. This time I chose practical. Maybe next time I'll choose hilarious. Well, hilarious to me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just so many challenges. It seems like everybody's coming up with a challenge. I just decided I don't have time for any of them these days. So anyhow, let's go through and give a shout out to some folks who over there in the chat. We got Ahmad, maybe a first time person here. Richard Kowalski, Frankie CNC Woodworking, Ron Cleveland. How you doing, Ron? Josh T, that's Josh Thompson, I believe. Mark Lindsay CNC, Todd H CNC. Trevor, Todd H says they make tape measures for that. I guess he's talking about your little thing there.
Yep. Kevin Calhoun, Larry Duggar, Richard Kowalski, Ron Cleveland. You mentioned, I think.
Yeah. Larry Duggar's in the house. Good to see you, Larry. Haven't seen you over there in a while. Grant Clark, Carl Whitaker. How you doing? From my old home stomping grounds. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to tune in tonight. I'm going to go ahead before we get started. Like I said, I've made up a little list of some maintenance things or tips that might help some folks, particularly newbies, which, that's my thing. I try to help the newbies. I figured the other guys have already made the mistakes by now and probably learned from them. So, Raymond Dixon in the house. But anyway, before we get started on that, I want to go ahead and get the giveaway thing out of the way too. I do want to, I want to try to clarify some things about this giveaway. I'm not even sure some people understand what it is I'm giving away. The giveaway is for a free set of the Gatton CNC plans. And that comes, if a lot of you have got the plans or bought the kits and know that the drawings I do are very detailed and pretty much have every nut, bolt, washer, V-groove bearing, whatever, in it, where you really don't have to do any thinking yourself. You just got to build it. Now, having said that, that's what the giveaway is for, some Gatton CNC plans. Now, I noticed that there's a lot of folks that enter the contest by putting the comment and whatever silly phrase I tell y'all to put it in there. And some of y'all already have Gatton CNCs or have bought the plans and stuff like that. And this whole giveaway thing is to try to help folks get into CNC that aren't already there. So I just want to clarify that if you already have a Gatton CNC kit that would have came with the plans, or you've already bought the plans, you're entering a contest to win something that you already have. So I don't get it, but whatever. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and do the giveaway and get that out of the way. And then if you want to learn how to win the one next week, you'll have to stay tuned for later in the show. We'll go over that. And the other thing I wanted to do too is another thing I wanted to clear up is, I don't think I've really talked about rules as far as entering the contest. It's like, you go, you get the phrase and you put it in the comment and you're entered. I think from now on, when I pick a winner, and I haven't really done it up to now. Thank you, Grant Clark, for the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Glad to know that button works. What was I saying? Oh, what I'm going to do is when I select the winner, before that winner becomes official, I'm going to be checking to see if they are a subscriber of mine. I think that's the least I can expect is, if you're going to, want the free stuff I'm giving away, the least you can do is be subscribed to my channel. And like I said, also, if you're a previous winner in one of my giveaways, or if you've already got the plans or whatever, like I said, if you've already bought that stuff, you already got what I'm giving away. So just to clear that up. So, all right, here's Becca. This is, I want to comment on Becca. She says, I want to give the plans to my brother. Here's the deal, Becca. And I hope I don't sound like a jerk saying this, but part of the reason of doing giveaways is to encourage people to come watch the show. So, that's how you build the views and that's all part of the thing. So if somebody says, well, I want to get the plans, but I want to win them so I can give them to somebody. Well, what you need to do is tell your brother to come watch the show and then enter. That is the way it makes sense for them to win, because that, if I'm just giving away plans and, it's like spending advertising dollars. If they're not doing me any good, then I might as well not even do it. So like I said, I hope I don't sound like a jerk. I'm giving free stuff away. I want people that don't have a CNC to win. And I don't think that's asking too much, but that's just the way I feel. Instead of trying to win, invite people, tell people about the show and say, hey, you can win these free plans if you come watch this show. And that will help to build the thing. I mean, that's part of why I do this. So I hope everybody understands that.
Yeah, Jason noticed the Super 8 conversion back here that I'm going through.
Yeah, those things are cool.
Yeah.
Those things are cool. Okay, now I hope we got all that messed about the giveaway. Like I said, if it's going to be a big hassle, I'm just going to quit doing them because sometimes I get a little fed up of, you know, I see folks in there entering the thing, and I'm like, you've already got what I'm trying to give away here. You know, let somebody else have a chance. So anyway, enough said. I guess if I piss people off, they'll just quit watching. But whatever. Anyhow, let's do this giveaway real quick and give away the one for this week. Let's see if I can. Okay, this is last week's show. Oh, I got a screen share first. What am I doing? What am I doing? Okay, let me present and then screen share. Can you see my screen, Javi? Anybody?
Sorry about that, Dave. No, no, I was muted.
You see my screen?
Not yet. I still see you. You are presenting, but you haven't shared your screen yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. My bad. Too many buttons to click.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, there we go. I should have known I hadn't seen the psychedelic.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the last week's video. I'll get this. I think I've already put it in here, but I'm going to stick it in here again just to make sure. And it says we have 36 unique commenters. So we're going to come over here. And like I said, folks, we're going to pick a winner. And hopefully it'll be somebody who does not already have this. And the winner, according to this, is Wizard Woodworks Sean Draper. And let's see if he's got the right phrase. Another great job by my buddy Rob. He does, but I'll have to check to make sure he's subscribed and that he doesn't already have one. I believe he does, but I'm not for certain. There's so many of them, so many of y'all out there now that I can't remember everybody without checking. Okay, so we're back. Anyway, let's see. I see some funny comments over there, but we won't go into those. All right, let's talk about some maintenance stuff. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is probably going to be well, a lot of it's going to be repetitive stuff for some of you guys that have been doing this a while. Like I said, some of the things you've maybe already made these mistakes, and that helps you to learn. That's probably how I learned most of them. And I do want to be completely honest and say that all of these tips and suggestions and things about maintenance that I'm about to tell you, I'm the world's worst at doing them. So there's a lot of these things I know you should do them, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else that I don't do them. But I seem to have pretty good luck because I don't have a whole lot of problems running my machine. So anyway, let's just start off. Maintenance in your hobby CNC machine. Now I put hobby CNC, but this could also apply to people who are using their machine as a part-time income. Maybe you work your day job and you go home at night and you run stuff, and then you do the craft shows on the weekend or Etsy store or whatever. But I got a dog laying right up under me here. Anyway, so I'm just going to start off reading some of these things. And Javi, if you want to jump in and comment, or if anybody out there in the
sure, I'll keep a close eye on the chat as always.
Okay.
Mhm.
So one of the things that you should do with some regularity is to blow out your control enclosure, whether it be the little box or maybe you've built a bigger box or got it hanging on the side of the machine or the back of the machine or something like that. But you should blow it out with compressed air and not at like 80 psi or something. Turn it down so that it's not real, just enough to get the dust out of there. And also be careful not, if you got your cooling fans in there, make sure you don't blow it on them and spin them too fast or in the wrong direction, because that will jack up your fan. So that should be a no-brainer. But I think most people probably don't think about it, because especially it's closed, it's out of sight, out of mind. And then when something starts acting weird on your machine, you go open it up and it's got dust packed all in there.
Yep. Speaking of blowing things out, Dave, I was thinking the other day, and I've been making it a maintenance habit. Is I've been using my compressor when I do clean out the rails and well, all the dust that I can. I also use it to blow out the water and clear the water lines. If you do have a water cooled spindle, the pump and the water lines and the tank, it works really well to clear out of all the if you have any thick algae or something like that. Which if you maintained your water, it probably wouldn't happen. But if you're if you're like us and you leave it for 6 months.
And it's funny, Javi, because that's one of the things I've had an issue with, as you will know. And I didn't even put that on the list. I guess I wasn't thinking about spindles. I was thinking more about routers.
That's why I reminded you, because I figured it's a perfect opportunity, because that's exactly when I do it with the little blower nozzle. That compressed air works fantastic. I spent half an hour trying to use the pump in reverse and blowing it out, and you know what? Nothing works better than compressed air for cleaning that out.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if I told you, but my little spinny gauge thing that you gave me, it is working jam up. Whatever was stuck in it before,
Yep,
broke loose, and now it spins like crazy. So it's really nice to be able to, at a glance, know that water is flowing through there, and my spindle's not going to overheat. So
excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Good. But yeah, compressed air is good. Like I said, you don't want to have it cranked up too crazy. So I just quick funny story. I remember one time I was working at one of these shops, and the company that they used an IT company to come in and take care of the service and stuff. And this guy, I'm not going to mention his name, but he come in there one day and decided, he's like, well, this thing's really dirty. I need to blow this out. So he asked the owner, and he says, well, can I, take this out to the shop and use some of your compressed air? And he did. And of course, it wasn't the best dry air. It had moisture in it and stuff. And he screwed up a whole server thing or whatever. And we were down for a day or two or something. That was kind of funny, I think. But anyhow, okay. I guess we're done talking about the enclosure. Another thing you should do is if you're going out to fire up your machine and you're using some form of dust collection, be it a dust collector unit or whether you maybe just using a shop vac or whatever, it's always a good idea to make sure that your bag or your barrel or shop vac, whatever it might be, is empty enough to handle whatever you're about to cut. Because nothing's worse than being right in the middle of a project and realize, the thing's full and you got to stop and empty it or whatever. And in my case, in my garage, I have a dust collection unit that has the old bag type. You pull the bag up, you cinch the strap and all that. It's also a good idea to make sure that bag is secure. And don't ask me how I know that, but as y'all know, I like to hit the button and then come back in and set in the AC and watch the thing on my camera. And the problem was my camera wasn't pointed over far enough to in the corner to see that dust collection. I went out there, and sometime during that run, the bag had come loose and dropped down, and man, had a mess to clean up. So, and that's the, those ones with a bag aren't real easy anyway. But always you want to check, to see how full it is, because if you overfill it and it packs it up, and then it's just when you pull it loose, or even with the barrel, you drag it out, now you got a mess because all that stuff that's packed up in there falls down. So that will save yourself some trouble doing that. Let's see. Another thing, and a lot of this stuff is really common sense, but again, I'm guilty about not doing it. Probably most of you are too. You want to check to make sure that your lead screw couplers are tight. I would suggest using some whiteout or something like that to make witness marks. That way you can just walk over there and look at a glance to see if they've moved. That's, because a lot of times people, the cut starts messing up and people automatically think they're losing steps, and it's not that at all. And you've probably heard me say this a million times on these YouTube live streams, is 99% of the time it's something mechanical. Check that out and don't go into the settings and start tinkering with that. Check the easy stuff first. Because for one, your Mach 3 settings or UC CNC settings or whatever the heck you're using, they don't change overnight. There's no gremlin that comes in there and changes them. If you haven't changed them, they're the same. It's something else, mostly mechanical. Let's see here. Okay, you also want to make sure your Acme nuts are tight. Like with the Gatton Cnc and the GarageWorks CNC and probably a lot of others, they use some kind of a what I call a nut block, where you fasten that in. Well, if those screws work loose, now you've got some slop in there. Even, it doesn't take much. And again, when you see the results on whatever your project is, you're going to think you're losing steps. And it's not losing steps. It's that thing flopping back and forth. It might only be a few thousandths, but it'll show up for sure if you're doing a V carving or something. So
absolutely.
That's
and the nuts and bolts as well. I know this is probably maybe a little overkill, because if you built it right, you shouldn't have nuts and bolts coming loose on you. But I thought I built my Gatton CNC, the Colossus, right, and I have I had the nut, and I behind the Z bracket, the Z plate, I had the nuts that hold the V groove bearings to the rails, and one of them just happened to vibrate loose, and I had a lock washer on it. So I went all out and switched all the nuts to nylon lock nuts, and never had an issue since. But make sure those, because since they are so, you don't want them too tight. You don't want them to close to tighten so much that the bearing won't move. So that tends to, as a result, if you're not using lock nuts there, there's a possibility that over time the vibrations will loosen the nut a bit.
Yeah.
Found mine on the floor.
Yeah, that's true. And same thing with the I like to use the Kep's nuts, because they have that little serrated washer on there. And if you get it good and tight, most of the time it's going to stay tight. But they could come loose. And speaking of nuts and bolts too, and if you're running your machine, all of a sudden you find a nut on your table, probably ought to stop and check, see what it is, instead of just picking it up and moving it. Now I have, with my GarageWorks, I have right after I built that 4x4 out there in my shop, apparently because that thing's got a gazillion screws and nuts on it, and next thing I know, I'm running, I see one of those Kep's nuts laying there, and I'm thinking, oh great. And I looked and looked and looked, and I could not find it. I still haven't found it. So the only thing I can figure is I must have dropped one and it fell down in the the little C channel part or something, and I just said, screw it, I can't get it with my fingers. I'll just grab another one. So, but in most cases, if a nut falls off of there and you find it on your table, you want to check and see where it came from.
Do you have wires on your list coming up, or can I mention that now? The wires to the limit switches. I had an issue with the other CNC I have, which was purchased in one piece and at a cost of 5 to 6 times a Gatton, and let's just say the wire just from operation, the terminal wire that clips onto the limit switch worked its way loose and it fell off. As a result, one time I ran it, and then I hear it going to home, and it going gadong 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 gadong, and well, it was an annoying sound, but immediately I knew what it was. But that's something you should always check every so often, every month or two. Check to make sure they're all tight and none of them are loosening up or anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what was that noise again?
Gadong 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 gadong.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Good. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew what that noise was.
That's the closest I can come to a stepper motor stalling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. You have to. I do have some further down in my notes here. I'm talking about checking the connection of, your stepper motors.
Got a super chat from Becca there.
Your cables. Oh, bless your heart, Becca. Thank you, man. The super chat working awesome tonight. Normally I don't get squat, but much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, check your cable connection, especially. I don't have it within reach, but y'all know what the Xylotex things, they use those little really cheap Molex connectors, and there's really nothing wrong with those except for one thing. And that is that when you connect them up using like the little extension cables or whatever, they're just not dust free. I mean, there's ways for dust to get in there, and I've actually burnt one up because dust gets down in them and shorts them out or something. But I probably showed it on a show probably last year or something. But you can burn those up. So if you use those kind of connectors or something similar, once you connect them, I take black electrical tape and wrap, because I'm not really going to unplug it again anyway.
John the Grief is asking if it's okay to use Loctite on the fittings.
That's a personal preference. I myself never use Loctite, and if you do use it, don't use red. Use blue. But I don't ever use it. If you, like I said, I know John's got Garage Works that uses those cap nuts. If you have trouble getting the caps nuts to hold, then I would maybe swap them out for the nylon nuts or something. But I haven't had that much trouble with stuff staying tight. I mean, I've used those same cap nuts. A lot of the things that I do in my builds, the Garage Works, are the same thing I did with Sidewinder, the metal Sidewinders that I sold, 10 years ago. When I get something that works well, I just stick with it. It's that old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing. So I've always just found that if you get them good and snug, and the thing I like about the caps nuts is because of that serrated washer, you can usually take a Phillips screwdriver and screw the screw and hold that nut with your hand until that washer catches, and you don't even have to put a wrench on it. Now, there's sometimes every once in a while you'll get one that you go to tighten it up and you can feel the nut spinning. Well, then I take a wrench and put on it. But most of the time, I don't even have to put a wrench on those. That's why I like using those. But yeah, if you want to use Loctite, go for it. But I just don't use the red because that stuff's serious. You want to use the blue. Yeah, Gerald's saying use Loctite blue. Make sure no plastic involved, or it will be eaten by the Loctite. there's a specific Loctite for plastic. Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of different kinds, but there's a green, I think. Blue's about all I've ever used, but I don't use it on CNC stuff. Red Loctite is really the peace of mind for internal parts. Yeah. Yeah. The red Loctite, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one you almost have to heat it up to break it loose or throw it away and buy a new one. Something like that. I'm not sure. Okay. Let's move on. So what we were talking about, I've jumped around here on my list now. So, okay. Another thing, like I said, stepper motor cable connections, really all connections in general, like Javi mentioned, the homing switches, limit switches stuff. You want to make sure that those, that'll make for a bad day if a wire comes loose and you tell it to go home or, something like that, and it can't tell that it's out of limit. Also, I had somebody the other day that I was helping on Facebook. I don't remember who it was having some problems. And what it ended up being, because he kept saying he had all his Mach 3 settings just right. And I said, well, have you done this? Have you done? And finally I thought, well, wait a minute. Have you checked to make sure your parallel connection either at your box or the one on your UC 100 or any of those connections? They all have to be really pushed on there, especially the parallel cables, because you might look and you think it's on there, but if it's wiggled just a little bit, your stepper motor will do stuff like you push the left arrow key and it goes left, and you push the right arrow key and it goes left. It'll do weird stuff like that. It's like it can only, it's not getting all of the signals because one of the pins isn't making contact. So, but again, like I've always said, it's, 99% of the time the problems are either something mechanical or loose connections, that kind of thing. It's probably, if you had your settings set up and your machine was running fine yesterday, there's no reason why it shouldn't run fine today. If it doesn't, it's not going to be those settings. I guarantee you. Just stay out of there before you get in there and mess something else up. Okay, let me see. Okay, getting back to, let's see, we talked about the Acme Nuts vibrating loose and stuff. Also, if you have a machine that has lead screws or a rack and pinion, you want to make sure that the teeth are free of debris and that they're lubricated properly. And again, I am the world's worst at this. On my Gatton, I've got, the lead screws are right out there kind of in open, but they are far enough to the side where they don't get a whole lot of dust. But I very seldom wipe them off. About the only time they get wiped off is when I walk up and I actually lean against them. And then I realize I got the black grease all on my shirt and stuff from it. So, but especially if you're using a machine that's got rack and pinion and the teeth are pointed up, you need to keep the stuff blowed out of there, or hopefully there's some kind of cover over it to try to keep stuff from getting down in there.
Yeah, Jesse Schneider was asking with limit switches. I thought it was something about setting up as normally open. Normally closed is the best way. That way, when you could go either way, but that way, if a wire comes off, then it actually creates an open and triggers it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. That's a good way to do it, so that when it thinks the switch is tripped just because the wire's off. So yeah, that's a good point. Now so we've talked about lead screws and rack and pinion. If you have a machine like an X-Carve or digital wood carver or something like that has belts, or maybe you've got a home belt job that's a chain drive or something, same kind of thing. You need to make sure your stuff stays clean, no debris gets in there, and also you got to have them tensioned properly, especially those machines with belts. That's been the big gripe with the X-Carves probably since they first come out, is that the belts are so thin and flimsy that they'll stretch, or you get them too tight, then you break one, and you know, it's just you lose steps, different things like that. So
And over time, every with another piece of maintenance with the belts is make sure you readjust them once a year. I had to do that with my laser engraver. It was a precision machine. It's an expensive machine, but it was still belt driven. And every year well, I was in a shop using it pretty much every day, so I was getting a considerable amount of use. But even so, the belts do tend to stretch, give just a little bit. And on a very precise machine, it matters.
yeah, yeah. And like I said, on a lot of the, well, probably a lot of the more expensive belt driven machines, you're probably going to have some kind of a spring loaded idler. So it's not as big a deal because that's going to help keep your tension. But even after a while, that will need some adjusting. So uh, you'll need to keep an eye on that. Let's see. Thought I made this print big enough where I can read it without my glasses. Okay, here's some more stuff. I don't know if you'd really consider this maintenance. Maybe not so much, but it's still some good things to think about. And probably most of you haven't really given much thought to some of these things. But one of them is if you're using a router on your CNC router, you know, let's say you're using I don't know, a DeWalt 611 or a Porter Cable 890 or 690 or, you know, whatever, Bosch, whatever it might be. If you're using a router, you probably want to have an extra set of brushes because, again, you don't want to be in the middle of a project. And I can tell you from experience, when the brushes go, they go. I mean, they're fine 1 second, and the next minute it just spins to a stop. And if you're not right there to hit the button or something, you just screwed up a whole however long you were working that project. Could be a long time if it was a Aztec calendar or something like that.
Or if you've got the space and the money, it would be good to have an extra Gatton CNC on hand as a spare.
Everybody should have at least two.
Of course,
I think.
Of course,
at least two. But now here's the other thing. I said, you know, get an extra set of brushes, but I also put here, or better yet, just keep an extra router on hand. I've always had, you know, well, I've got it on my Garage Works now, but even when I had that old metal Sidewinder out there in my shop for years, I always ran the Porter Cable 690. Well, way back several years ago, and it's funny I mentioned the Aztec counter because that's exactly what I was running. And I happened to come in, I was sitting at my little counter here having something to eat, and I thought I heard it start to sputter, so I jumped up and I ran out there and I caught it just as it was doing an up move, and I stopped it. And so fortunately, when the router quit, I didn't lose anything because it just happened to stop when it was doing a move and it was up in the air. And of course, I didn't have any brushes. I didn't have another router. So I run to probably Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever, bought another Porter Cable 690, brought it home, popped it in, and took off right where I left off, and everything was fine. Didn't lose my workpiece or anything. But I lost the time having to stop, get in the truck, drive to the store, just all that. So if you have, you know, having an extra router, the same kind that you're using, is to me even better than having an extra set of brushes, because if you, let's say your router quits and you've got an extra set of brushes and you go, okay, well, let me just pop it out and put these brushes in. And you go to pop the brushes out and you go, wait a minute, these brushes still look good. Maybe the router just burned up or something. Maybe something happened to it.
Not only that, you could actually swap the router, continue the job while you take the time to take it apart, take the old one apart, and check the brushes.
Yeah, and see if you have an extra router that you know works, you can use it for, you know, hand routing when you're because now you've got another router.
Mhm.
But if it quits, like Javi says, you just swap it out, hit the button, keep going. And it doesn't matter whether you have another set of brushes or not, because now you got time to order them and take a couple of days from Amazon or wherever you get them to get them in. But so to me, I've never kept brushes on hand, but I've always had, ever since that time, I've always had an extra router. In fact, believe it or not, some of you probably know this, when I had my spindle on my Gatton, that's what I used to cut the Gatton CNC kits. And it would happen when Javi and Mark was here. My heard a pop, my VFD quit, and I was dead in the water. So I got online and I was trying to order just the VFD, and found out that you could get the VFD by itself, but it was going to take 2 weeks to ship because it wasn't prime. So, but yet I could buy the whole kit with an extra spindle, mount, the whole 9 yards, and have it in 2 days. So guess who bought another kit? So I've actually got a spare spindle, a spare mount, a spare VFD, because they did replace the one that was bad.
Dave Mack was asking if a spare spindle, if it applies to a spindle. And I mean, granted, spindles are a lot more expensive, but they're also a lot more reliable. By the time you wear out a spindle, you're probably going to be able to afford 2 or 3 extra spindles. So
Yeah,
eventually,
but we haven't got far enough down my list here to talk about some of this stuff. But
yeah,
one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I know the title of this was maintenance for your hobby CNC, but I know, like I said, I know, pretty much everybody has a CNC. At some point, they're going to make something and sell it, and maybe not everybody, but they're going to at least sell a few things. But here's something that some of these folks need to think about. And I know there's folks out there that are heavy into the craft shows and stuff like this, but you need to keep a certain amount of spare parts on hand. Maybe not a full spindle or something like that, but like I said, the routers are reasonably inexpensive. If you're using a router, have a spare router or brushes. Drivers, the individual drivers are reasonably cheap. Wouldn't hurt to keep one of those on hand, because here's what you have to think about, folks, is you say, well, I don't want to keep, drivers maybe $50 or something. I don't want to spend $50 and have something sitting on the shelf. Well, if you're running a job and your machine goes down, how much money are you losing while that thing sits idle and it can't run? So I look at it that way. If you're just doing stuff strictly for a hobby and you're making it, then it's not a big deal. It quit running. It's going to take me a week to get a part. Wait, no big deal. But if you're doing this to make money, or maybe you're doing a project for free, but you just promised somebody a certain deadline, the parts are not that expensive. At least the ones that are most likely to fail. I think they're not, driver's not that much. Let's see, what else did I have?
well,
Stepper
bits,
motors, they're pretty reliable.
Bits is the big one, but I'm sure you're getting to that part.
Yeah, I've got that down on the list as well. Breakout, well, all that stuff is really, really dirt cheap when you think about it. So, if you're using this either as a part-time business or a business and you're making money, you can't afford to have that thing down. So, you need to, a lot of times, believe you guys probably think I'm crazy, but a lot of times I'd have an extra Xylatex box sitting around just in case something happened. And I've had good luck because I've never had one go bad. So, it's always good if you're doing something, you're making money, you have to think, well, I don't want to have that part on the shelf, but that would be nothing compared to the money I'd lose having to wait a couple of days to get a part in. So, Peter Pasquello says same applies if you live overseas waiting for parts to come. Yeah, if you live somewhere where it's hard to get stuff, you better, you want to have stuff, an extra whatever there, so that you can stay running. Because that's, I mean, that's what it's about. Don't make you any money, or you don't have any fun with it. But just sitting there looking at it, it's got to be running.
Yeah, I always keep a good set of bits on hand, and
yeah, that was the last thing I had on my list, is keep extras of your, what I call go-to bits, router bits on hand. You know, there's probably a lot of people that are a lot more organized than me, but when I get my bits, I just have a drawer out there under my machine that I put them in, and I leave them in the little plastic things that they come in. I use the CMT bits, and they always come in that nice little orange plastic looking see-through thing. And I just kind of have, like right now, I've got 3 of them. I have an old one in the spindle, and I have 3 more replacements in the drawer. And my rule of thumb is, of course, you know, with Amazon Prime, it's not a big deal. You can order them, have them in 2 days. But when I open up that last one, I know it's time to order 3 more. That's why I've got 3 more in the drawer right now, is because I put that last one in just the other day, and I'm like, okay, time to order 3 more. And
I always keep an extra set of bits on hand, because sometimes you never know when you're going to be going through a few sheets of plywood or worse, some MDF, which I rarely like to work with, but sometimes the job calls for it. And anything with glue inside, like MDF or will just cake those bits and wear them out 10 times faster. And I'll tell you, the not only having an extra bit on hand, because one job could wear out a bit to the. I like sharp bits. There are people who, they'll just crank up their speed all the way up, and they'll worry about standing the fuzzies off. But that's an awful lot of work. And if you keep a sharp bit on hand, it'll save you mountains of time. But on occasion, I find myself that I didn't have that extra bit. I bought those the set of they're cheap, they're lousy, but it's for an emergency. The diamond honing from Harbor Freight, those little diamond honing things, and for the straight bits, a couple little scrapes will get you by for a job. And
didn't Peter Pasquillo do a video on how to sharpen stuff like that?
Absolutely. Peter's done a video on how to sharpen the bits, and it's very useful.
Yeah, I got to tell you, because I don't use many straight type things like you're talking about. I use the spirals and stuff like that. And I pull them out, and when they're dull, they're dull. I don't try to, I just throw them in a box. I've got a box, probably got 40 or 50 different bits out there. But a lot of that came from trying different bits to figure out what worked best with the plywood, what I could get the most mileage.
I've got a bunch of old dull bits, and Sean Martyr has told me that a buddy of his sharpens bits, so I got to take them all over there and see what he'll charge me for the batch.
I've just never had.
I'm with you as far as I'm not completely. Once or twice, possibly, I might sharpen it, but I do realize that every time you sharpen a bit, I have to basically put it on the caliper again and see how close it is, how the tolerances are, because a 1/4-inch bit sharpened could be down a couple thou, as much as a couple thou, and you have to adjust for that in your program, or just throw away the bit and buy a new one if your job is that precise. Clearly, most wood jobs are not, because the wood swells more than a couple thou. But
another thing I'd like to mention about bits, and this is for people that are kind of doing stuff on a regular basis and using a lot of bits and doing a lot of different projects, is in my case, I use a 1/4-inch up spiral CMTs to cut the Gatton kits. Well, I want to keep, I want to know how many blanks I'm able to cut out of a bit. And this is back when I was trying different bits. I tried white side. I tried Freud. I tried some Amana, and I tried CMT, and now I use the CMT. And the reason I use CMT is when I was trying all these different bits, I would, every time I put a brand new bit in, I would had a little piece of paper out there, and I would write the date, and I'd put a little mark, and then when I cut another blank, I'd put, you know how you do the little lines and you put the thing every 5. And I started figuring out that I'm like, okay, that bit shot, so that's about how many I can get out of a white side. So now I'll put an Amana in, or Freud or whatever. And I did that. And of course, it took me a long time, but after a while, I figured out that the best bang for my buck was the CMT. That I could get more mileage out of those as far as number of blanks cut. And again, I'm talking 3/4 plywood with glue and, you know, stuff like that in it.
And that's very important to know. That's a very good point. I've mentioned it before, but one time I used one of those Vermont Americans that you get at the back of the wood show, and it was brand new. It was sealed, and it lasted half a job. And my work piece is 2 foot by 3 foot. Half of that 3/4 inch plywood, and I was cutting it extremely conservatively. Before I started getting fuzzies everywhere, it was that's the last time I ever used a cheap bit. And I went to the other extreme with Amana, and I've been using, I used to use the same Amana bit for a year and a half. I mean, I'd take it easy on it, but it's always important to have spare bits, because it's not just wear and tear. It's what happens if you accidentally hit that stray nail or that stray screw or nut on the workpiece. Your bit's gone in one shot. Or you run it into the ground. I mean, I've never had this happen because I use 1/2 inch shank, but for 1/4 inch bits, even the best bits, with a powerful enough machine and the wrong, you'll snap them.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of leads me into the next thing, talking about bits and stuff and breaking them and that kind of thing. And this is more for the newbie folks. If you're running a project or a job that has multiple bit changes, and I know there's people, some people use the post where you use the automatic tool changer thing, even though you don't have one, so that it prompts you to change it and all that. Or there's people that are like me that just make multiple programs for the tool path, you know, the different tool paths, and just do it that way. If you're one of the ones that does it like me, and you have, let's say you've got a program, and the first program is going to run a 90-degree V bit, and then you got to change it out, maybe put a 60-degree V bit for some other part of it, and then you're going to change it out and put a regular end mill type bit in it to part it out. So you've got, you know, 3 different programs or something like that. And like I said, this is mostly for the newer guys, because this is something that I've done a bunch of times. Javi's probably done it. Probably most of y'all have done it, if you'll admit it. But it's real easy to finish a program and go, okay, I need to change the bit, I need to re-zero the bit, and I need to make sure I load the new program in. And you kind of almost have to make yourself like a little checklist, because if you don't and you forget any one of those things, you just what you were working on. And I wished I had a nickel for, back in my early days anyway, how many times I would change, you know, it would stop and I'd raise it up and I'd change the bit and I'd lower it down, I'd reset the 0 and everything. And I'd go, okay, good. Go over and hit cycle start. And I realized it's the same program that was in the first, you know, for the first one. And I'm like, oh, I just messed that. You know, hopefully I'm going to have to kick my dog here in a minute. He's getting a little rambunctious. Go sit down, Jack. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So you may want to come up with some kind of a little checklist, like, you know, if you're just running a 1-bit program or something, it's not a big deal. But if you got something where you have to remember you know, and I try to do everything in the same sequence. I don't really use a list, but you know, like when it stops, what I'll do is as soon as it stops, I'll go ahead and load that other program in right then while I'm standing at the computer. Then I go over and I raise it up and change the bit, and then I make sure I pull my touch plate off and zero it out. So as long as you have some kind of a system or a checklist, because I can tell you when you're new, and what's really bad, and I'm the worst one, is I do fine when I'm out working around my machine by myself. But if I've got somebody else that stopped by and visiting and they're talking to me, I will get sidetracked and think I did that and did. That's usually when all my mistakes happen, is when I got somebody here talking to me, because I can't talk and work at the same time apparently. But yeah, use a little list or whatever to make sure that you've got the right bit in for the right program, and that you've reset your zero, your Z0 anyway after that. So, okay, now I've just got, we're right at 9 o'clock here. Got just a couple of more things I want to talk about that I kind of consider them part of your maintenance plan, or what should be. And again, I know there's folks out there that Raymond Dixon says CMT. Yeah, CMT is what I like to use, Ray. Here are some things that you might not think as maintenance, but boy, when you need them, then you go, man, I wished I'd have done that. And we've talked about it before. You need to make sure if you've got your machine running, it's all jam up, everything's running perfect on it, you need to back up your profile, your XML files. That's one thing. Another thing you need to make sure you do is you need to make sure you have a multiple copies somewhere other than your main thing, your main computer that you're running your machine.
Yeah, that's a very important maintenance tip, Dave. Our CNCs are not just a tool, but half of it is all software computers and very expensive programs, and that's something that does need to be backed up, like any other computer program.
Yeah, and like I said, you need the profiles. If you've got more than one machine like me and you got multiple profiles, you need to get those backed up. Even if you just got one machine, you need to get that XML file backed up. If you're running Mach 3 or UCNC or whatever the heck it is, it's got a license file. You need to make sure you get that, because if that computer craps out and you have to reinstall it, you got to make sure you have that license file to put back in there to get a full-blown version. The software, if you're using VCar Pro or Aspire, or none of this software to program these things is really cheap. If you and a lot of times these days when you buy that stuff, you buy it online, you download it, they email you a little activation code, you put it in, and then you don't think any more about it. And then something happens and you need to reinstall it. And now what I do with that activation code, I usually take my activation codes for all my Vectric products. I've got VCar Pro and Photo VCar, which I really don't use, but still, if I want to use it, I want to make sure I can. But I have a notepad file where when they send me that email with that big old long code, that you have to put in there, I will copy that and paste it in a notepad file. Then I'll put that notepad file on at least 1 or 2 or 3 different computers, so that I know I'm not going to lose it on a computer. I could, because all 3 computers aren't going to go out at the same time. And then I also print out that paper that's got the activation code on it, and I got a file in my office that I put that on there, because you have to think of it like Aspire. That's $2,000.
Yep.
And it's worthless if you don't have that activation code.
Absolutely.
So you got to treat that little piece of paper with that activation code. You got to treat that like that's $2,000 right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And these programs, I mean, on the one hand, many of the programs are available online. The activation codes are not. So save those for certain. but the programs are available downloaded. But one important point is, like, I have on every one of my computers, and I've developed this from when I had my sign shop with a vinyl printer, with a laser cutter, with a rotary engraver. Each had a separate computer. Every drive that I had cloned. That's just an extra precaution. If you're running a business, that's a very good precaution, because it's not just the program itself, it's the incredible loss of time. You're going to be spending an entire day loading Windows, duplicating, loading the files, installing, configuring, where you could just, in less than a couple hours, or actually, if you have a clone of the drive, swap the bad drive out, if it is a drive, or even a spare computer, if they're not that expensive, and it's insurance against catastrophic failure.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. Most people, especially the software part of it, most people get it, they download it, they get their activation code, they put it in, it's working, all's great. 2 years later, the computer craps out. Where did I put that activate? Oh, that email's long gone. Or, and I know somebody says you can get it on the portal now. Yeah, if you go, and you can probably figure out a way to get it, but why spend all that time trying to contact them or go through, I don't know how long it takes. But if you've already got it right there in your hand, all you got to do is load it up, put it in again. And speaking of loading it up again, I make sure, like, when you if you go buy VCar Pro right now, you download it, more than likely it's going to be put in your, or at least most computers, I think, puts it in a download folder. Well, I always make sure I get that and put that somewhere else too. So that I have it. So I don't even have to get online to do anything, because I don't have my computers that I run my machine with online. I know a lot of people like that. They want to play on Facebook or something while they're. I just think that's bad news. Nothing good comes from having your machine computer online.
Oh, I agree. I recently had one of my CNCs is on a Windows 7 system, and I don't know what happened, but recently there was an automatic update, and I had accidentally connected it online. It updated my Windows 7 to the point that now it didn't function with on that particular unit. I use WinCNC, and rather than updating WinCNC, or if there is an update, or going through all of that, I just restored the original image that I had saved, and I'm back and operating right away. Some updates are helpful for security reasons, but if you don't have it connected to the internet, every time you update, it's detrimental. So you don't need it.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I know there's lots of folks that have a computer in their shop, and they've got internet run out there, and they use that same computer to, do all this stuff. And I just never been a fan of that, because if you're not connected online, you don't have to worry about anything happening. It can't happen if you're not connected. So, that's my thoughts. My machines I used to make money with, and they're too important to me to be worried about catching some weird virus or, Facebook crap or something like that. I use a different computer for the Facebook crap. So anyway, I think, let's see, what are we getting on here? A little after 9. I guess, I guess I've pretty much mentioned anything on my list. Anybody out there have any other questions? Becca Miller, did I replace my wood wall with brick? No, I'm in a whole different room. I'm in one of the spare bedrooms, and it got to, doing these shows. I know you guys probably just think I just, snap my fingers and these shows happen, but they're really, the way I was doing them before, they're a lot of work, because whether I was doing them out in the garage or out in the shop, or even if I was doing them in front of my infamous wood wall in there, you know, I'd have to drag the laptops out and all this stuff. And I just decided I was tired of that. I was tired of having crappy video. So I've got my desktop right here, and I've moved into the second spare room that I have. You know, I live here by myself, just me and the two mutts. So, but this is a, if I can move it, it's a tapestry just put up there. When I did the first couple of shows in here, and all of these walls in this room are what I call the realtor beige, which is the real neutral color that realtors tell you to paint your house so that it'll look good for any kind of person. But it just looked too plain and too drab. And these things are like, I forget what I paid for that, 15, 20 bucks or something, but it gives a little contrast, looks a little different. So anyway, hope you like it, Becca. That's what it is. It's like you can get all kinds of scenes, and you know, in fact, you can get the ones that look like a wood wall. But
yeah, I don't. There's a question from Raymond Dixon. How do you handle periodic updates for saving info? I kind of don't understand the question. As far as updates, I have one of my machines is a Windows XP machine with in fact it doesn't even have Service Pack 3 on it. It has Service Pack 2. It's running with the original program installation, and it's G-code. It's running a CNC. There's no need for any type of updates.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Ray, I don't know. Is he talking about the updates for Windows for the computer itself, or is he talking about updates to like?
Oh, for a VCarve or Aspire.
I don't know.
Well, that all really depends on. Again, one of them I like having the latest. Well, with Aspire, I have it on a completely different computer, so I always keep that updated, and that's my design computer. But the computer that's connected to the CNC, that just has Mach 3 and a plain Jane operating system. Nothing else really needed there.
Yeah, he says software updates say like VCarve or something. This is my office computer that I'm now using to do these shows. So this is where my internet is and all that. Of course, I do have Wi-Fi, but I don't use any of that out in my shop or in the garage. You know, I have machines both places and computers both places. But if I like, I just checked my VCarve Pro the other day. I was getting ready to draw something up right here. Most of the time when I do stuff, I do it at my office computer. And I thought, well, you know what? I haven't checked to see if there's updates for VCarve Pro in a while, so let me check. So I did, and there was one. I went and got it downloaded and everything, and have it installed here. But when I go out to the shop where I have VCarve Pro 2, I haven't updated that one yet. But I mean, it's not a big deal. You just put it on a thumb drive and carry it out there. I would still rather do that than try to put it on, have the machine computer on Wi-Fi or hardwired with Cat5 or what. Yeah. I just think you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I personally, I have two networks. I have one that goes from my computer out to the rest of the world, and I have a completely separate network, which is computer to computer, all local. And so they're all interconnected, whether I'm cutting something with the vinyl cutter and I need to send it to that computer, or rotary, or for that matter, the computer in the other CNC or this CNC. I will do all my designs from nice comfort of my office chair and send it. And you could just as easily put it on a thumb drive and drop it in there. But the way, and maybe this is not so smart, but the way I happen to place my computers, they're tucked underneath, far away from any dust, outside of the enclosure, not the easiest to get to. In fact, I have a little stick that I use to hit the power button, because that's the only thing I need to do whenever power goes out. And short of that, everything else is you know, the keyboard's accessible to me and everything else. But the computer itself, I haven't needed to touch it in 2 or 3 years, short of turning it on.
So, yeah, so I hope we answered your question, Ray. As far, like I said, as far as the operating system like Windows, I don't worry about updates because if it's working, you don't need any updates for that. It's just running a CNC. It doesn't take much to do it. We don't need the latest, you know, whatever, all that crap Windows puts on stuff. And then, like I said, for the VCar Pro or some kind of software like that, it's I can do it easily with a thumb drive. It's not a big, because you're not doing it that often. They don't do updates all the time like some, you know, like some things do. And as far as Mach 3, good Lord, I've never updated that. I don't think. I've been running the same one. You know, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it works, it works. I don't have to worry about that. So.
Yeah, Becca says I can't get to the computer because I got too much stuff.
As how do you get the files from the design computer to the computer running Mach 3 running the router? I use thumb drives. I know that's probably, you know, you guys probably go, oh, that's old school, man, but it's safe, you know. I don't have, with that other machine not being connected to the internet, I don't have to worry about anything getting screwy with it. It works, and I had a computer. In fact, it still works. I just replaced it because I bought a better one from Michael Chipser, and it was god awful slow. But I mean, the thing was probably 10 years old. Had Windows. Man, I can't even remember what it was. One of the older versions of Windows, and it just kept working and working, and still it would still work if I plug it in. But I bought the bad thing is I would do something in here with my VCar Pro, and with my desktop, you know, when you're doing the simulation and stuff, it's like, boom, it's done. And then I would take it out there to the shop, and if I go, oh, I forgot to do this, well, let me just do it on here, and then you run the simulation, and it's like, okay, might as well go get a cup of coffee, you know. So that's why I got a different computer for there, but you know, whatever floats your boat. If you want to put it on the internet, I don't care, because I'm not the one that's going to be having problems when something happens. Like I said, a lot of people do, and they always seem to have more problems. So I don't.
Todd's asking how often you delete the files off your USB stick.
Well, I've got files. This USB stick, I've had it forever. I know. I'm trying to think. At least, I can't even remember when I bought it. Probably 10 years ago. I don't know. But anyway, there's probably files that have been on there for years. And just so you know, this thing got left in my pocket when I did laundry the other day. And I didn't know, of course, I didn't know it was in there. And I was looking, I thought, I wonder where I did my thumb drive. I looked all over. I thought I left it in a computer somewhere, and I'm walking around looking all over for it. Well, I never did find it. So I thought, well, I guess I've lost it. I'll have to get another one. And I mean, there's lots of stuff on here, but it's nothing I couldn't live without, you know, because I keep stuff on lots of different computers. Well, anyway, when I took my blue jeans and put them in the dryer, apparently running around in the dryer, this flipped out of the pocket. So when I pull the jeans out, there's this thing laying in the bottom of the dryer. And I'm thinking, oh, there it is. Well, it's probably not going to work. Works fine. So I guess it's okay to wash them as long as you dry them good. You know, people were saying, yeah, put them in a thing of rice or something. And I'm like, I don't need to do that. I already dried it. But I can stick it in here right now and like figure out which way it goes.
As your show comes off the air now. Bzzzt.
Well, I didn't hear it. But there it is. It just popped up. Well, y'all can't see that, I guess. But yeah. So I again, you know, we're talking maintenance stuff, and I'm probably the world's worst at doing stuff. I don't clean files off like I should. The only time I delete something off is when I go, man, there's not room for this. I need to make some room. Then I'll delete something old off of there. But anyway, we're running along here. Todd says that's not how you delete files in the wash. Yeah, I tried, but it wouldn't delete them. They were all still there. Okay, we're at 9:18. I know we started probably a minute or two late. Javi, you got anything else you want to throw in here before we get out of here?
No, I can't really think of anything. You've pretty much covered everything as far as maintenance is concerned. I'm trying to look and see if there's anything in particular. Always take a look at your if you do have a drag chain, make sure you look at all the connections, because sometimes a connection might come loose a little bit, and while it's running, it'll pop off and the wires will go everywhere, and that could cause quite a bit of a mess. Spoil board is another big one. The spoil board maintenance, but that depends on, I mean, because I know, Dave, you don't use a spoil board, you use a sacrificial board on top of your spoil board. But like I have an extra layer. I have a nice thick 1.5-inch thick spoil board, and when it gets down to about 3/4 inches, I just plop another glue another spoil board on it and run my program that'll cut all the holes and the holes for the T-track on the top half.
Yeah, that's one thing. I think that's one of the things I thought about, but then I forgot to write it down, was the drag chain, because like you say, if let's say you're using a Xylotex box, and you need to add one extension cables. Well, when you plug those two Molex connectors in, if it's going to be in a drag chain going back and forth and stuff, you want to make sure you take that and tape it up, not just to keep the dust out of it, but to keep it from coming apart.
And if you are building, well, it's more of a tip than a maintenance procedure, but if when I built the Colossus, I made the mistake of just twisting the wires and saying to myself, oh, I'll solder those wires. I twisted them and taped them temporarily just to make sure everything was running. And I said to myself, oh, after I make sure everything's running, I'll solder them. Well, one of the motor wires came apart. So I was going to say have maintenance procedure to make sure you check all the wires, but the tip I have is solder all your connections that are not connector based, or even the ones that are connector based, because you'll find there's a lot of movement, and over time the most connected of wires will become disconnected.
Yeah,
it happened to me in a very short time, and I found my CNC racked as a result, because it was one of the Y motors.
Yep, and that makes for a pretty bad day, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did.
All right, well, we're going to wrap this one up. I think I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, if I didn't, I meant to. Next week, we're going to be talking about Raspberry Pi, how to run your CNC with those. I know that was one of the questions that some folks wanted me to talk about. So Ryan Ballard is, I don't think he's out in the chat. I haven't seen him. If you're out there, Ryan Ballard. But I believe he's one that uses a Raspberry Pi with his machine. So he's going to be on next week to talk about that. Probably the week after that, I've been getting some folks kind of wanting to show off their projects again. So we may do a show and tell or something, maybe the week after next or something like that. But before we get out of here, I'm going to tell you what you need to do if you want to try to win the prize for next week. And it's going to be a little different. Instead of me coming up with some little silly saying for y'all to put in the chat or in the I keep saying chat. It's in the comments. Leave a comment after it becomes a video. Here's what I want you to do. If you want to win the Gatton Cnc Plans, I want you to come back after this has been a video, which once we sign off, it comes back in like just a few minutes. and I want you to leave a comment, and I want you to tell me what is your favorite thing about CNC. And I read each and every comment. I don't always comment. Sometimes if I get busy doing other stuff, I don't always have time to comment, but I do get a notification every time somebody puts a comment on the video, and I can look at it on my phone. So I want everybody to leave a comment, and this way we're going to get probably a lot of different things, I would think. And I'm going to go through next Saturday evening before the show starts, and I'll go through and I'm going to pick one that I like the best. I guess that's the only way to say it, because I'm anxious to see what you'll come up with. But so that's the deal. That's how you enter to win the Gatton CNC Plans for next week's thing. It will be to leave a comment and let me know what is your favorite thing about CNC. Everybody got it?
Yep.
All right. Javi, thank you again for joining me tonight. Are you doing a show tonight?
No, I'm not gonna. I'm rethinking the show as far as well, I'm just.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just thinking.
No, not at all. It's just I've been very busy. I've been very busy with some recent land acquisitions and some personal stuff at home. So I'm a little swamped as of late, and I'm going to see when I can get back into the swing of things.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to get out of here. Thanks again for everybody that watched. Thanks especially to Becca, and I can't remember who the other one was. I don't want to say because I can't remember. I'm terrible with names anyway. For the super chats, those are much appreciated. I always forget to mention it, but there's lots of ways to support my channel that will keep me motivated to get on here and do these things that I do. And that's, one is the super chat. That's one way. The other one is I have a PayPal link. It's kind of like one of them tip jar type things. You can do that. Or if you want some swag, I've got a link. I think I put it on here. I'm not sure. Where you can go buy shirts, hats, coffee mugs, whatever. That is a good way to support my channel, and I appreciate everybody that's done that. I love going places and seeing somebody wearing the swag. So that's good. All right, thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see y'all next week. Everybody have a good one.
Good night, all.